If you are thinking about sending your child to selective high school or just going to a New South Wales public school, then you should watch this video to see which one is better. In New South Wales, not all public schools are the same. Some require an entrance exam while others accept all students. So does that make selective high schools better? Not necessarily, as it really depends on a few different factors. Please do keep in mind that I will try to be as objective as possible, but I'm going to view this with potential inherent bias as someone who attended selective high schools, being Penrith and Girraween High School. First of all, let's start off with the differences between the two. If you have watched any of the videos on this YouTube channel before, you would already know that for those who are new, a New South Wales Selective High School is a publicly funded school that requires students to pass a competitive exam in order to get in. In 2024, there were over 18,000 students who did the exam in Year 6 for Year 7 entry into these schools. They're designed for academically gifted students and offer an accelerated, rigorous curriculum that people believe can really help them prepare for university. On the other hand, non-selective public schools are open to all students in a designated catchment stream with no academic entry requirements. As long as you live in the zone, you can join. It follows the New South Wales curriculum, and the range of academic rigor will vary depending on the school. Some of these schools may still offer gifted and talented or gifted programs that can help students who are more academically gifted, but do not have the same standard or competitive criteria as selective high schools. Both selective and non-selective public schools are government funded, and there are many students who can still attend university for higher education, whichever one that they actually attended to. Some people believe that selective high schools are superior because of higher academic results, better university placements, and generally more motivated peers. Others argue that regular public schools can just be as good depending on the student's needs, and in fact is much more convenient to attend due to the proximity of the student and where they live. In my opinion, one of the main reasons why selective schools are seen to be better than public schools has to be the difference in academics. When we look at the statistics, selective high schools consistently rank at the top for HSC results, with a higher percentage of students achieving an ATAR of 90 and above. The higher the ATAR, the more options you have to get into certain university degrees. If your ATAR is too low, for instance, certain occupations may not be possible, such as being a vet or an optometrist, which require very high ATARs. In saying that though, there are still many public schools that are comparable to certain partial and fully selective high schools, and it does not necessarily require students to get a high ATAR by strictly and exclusively joining a selective high school. Schools like Epping Boys and Carlingford are renowned public schools that value education, in the rankings of 61 and 73 respectively in the New South Wales HSC rankings show that these are strong schools that perform well in the HSC. Another reason is due to a more challenging curriculum, as selective high schools may have access to courses that are tailored to a more higher achieving students and covering more difficult content earlier as a result of the entrance requirements. For example, when I attended Girraween High School, we only had the option to do English Advanced in Year 11 and 12 as the default option. The reason why we did not have the option to go to Standard English or study it in Year 11 and 12 is because we already covered some of the content in Year 10, and it would be in some ways unfair for selective students to do it because of the lower difficulty. Advanced English also scales better as it considers it to be more difficult compared to Standard English, so it will help more in terms of the HSC. A byproduct of this is that some believe since certain students have to learn more challenging content, students can focus on the education rather than spend heaps of time in classroom management for students that may be wildly different in academic ability, like in more normal public schools. This is because in normal public schools, there may be students in a class who is really behind, as well as students who are really ahead, making it a delicate balancing act for teachers to manage appropriately. This can always be the case for selective high schools as well, but logically, we can assume that the swings and the differences between certain students who are attending the same school at a fully selective high school would be to a lesser degree. Although people say that selective high schools have fewer behavioral issues compared to some public schools, if all students are more academically focused, but I could not find stats to support this, and it will be too subjective for me to really pass this off as a fact. Furthermore, when students attend a school by completing and scoring high enough in a certain examination, they get to be surrounded by academically driven classmates. This can be beneficial for students who are competitive and want to be motivated to do well compared to the cohort. A drawback that I've seen though is that students who transfer into a selective high school or even make it into a selective high school may not necessarily possess the drive and could also find it difficult to adapt to their level. For example, when I joined Girraween High School in year 11, the change was not very drastic for me personally, since I already attended Penrith High School, which was a fully selective high school. However, I joined with some students who came from public schools, and although they were ranked one of the highest in their respective schools like Weggers Hill, Blacktown Girls, etc., the standard of Girraween was much higher, and ultimately it seemed like they did struggle a bit more. It could also be a hit on their self-esteem because they're used to being at a very high ranking. However, instead of being in the top 10 in English, for example, they might be in the bottom 30, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but now it's not what they're used to. So for students who are not as competitive and prioritize less on academics, a public school may also be better because there'll be a wider range of people they can interact with. Sure, there are going to be students who are smart and study a ton to ensure they do really well in their school assessments, but there's also going to be students who aren't going to do this, and as a result, they can decide who they really want to interact, engage with, or hang out with. There is a wider spectrum of students that they can be involved with, as opposed to in a selective high school, where generally most or the majority of students will prioritize academics. We know this as public schools, including selective schools, serve a broader spectrum of students, including those from different cultural, socioeconomic, and academic backgrounds. If you want your child to interact with students from different and completely varied backgrounds, then the top-ranked selective schools may not be the best representation for this, as they are quite dominated by Asians. I personally remember that at both Penrith and Girraween, people of my skin color and darker skin color will be the majority of students. So if this is not what you particularly want for your child, and you want a good mix of students from different cultural backgrounds, selective schools may not be the best, and a public school could be a better option. Although certain suburbs may also reflect a higher percentage of a certain ethnicity. For example, Epping Boys, which is a very well-ranked school, currently has over 40% of their population being Chinese and Indian in terms of the Epping suburb. As a result, if you live in the catchment area of Epping Boys, you're more likely to see Chinese and Indian students as they just live in the area. We also know that students who have language backgrounds other than English are particularly from Asian heritage, and this demographic trend can be accompanied by pretty high academic achievements. 97% of students who attend James Roos, 94% of students who attend Baulkham Hills, and 92% of students who attend North Sydney Boys all come from a language background other than English. If your child is not exposed to a diverse range of students, they may not be aware of certain alternative pathways besides university, like TAFE, trades, or even creative alternatives that they might really thrive in. Going to university is not the only pathway in life, but personally for me and the students that I teach, and I guess most of my friends who attended the same school as me, by attending a selective high school, it really does feel like going to university is the most straightforward and logical option. There is some debate to whether selective schools receive more funding as well. Having more advanced extracurricular or having high access to academic or even extracurricular competitions. I tried to find statistics to back this up, but it really depends on the individual school, and I could not verify this myself based on my experience and from speaking to students. I do, however, know that most selective schools will offer and have access to academic opportunities in competitions like the ICAS exam or the Australian Maths competition, etc. This is sometimes not offered at certain New South Wales public schools. However, for students who still want to do these exams because they prioritize academic merit and achievement and want to see where they stand, there are still alternative options for them to do those tests, such as at external venues where they could participate in, even if they're not attending a selective high school. But it's not a big deal breaker or anything. People who are against selective schools typically believe that students can still achieve a really high ATAR by attending a normal public school. This is something that is completely true, and I support this as well. However, I do want to share that the actual HSC rankings, which ranks schools based on their students' performance in the HSC each year, does show clear trends that is useful to learn. We know that selective high schools consistently achieve top rankings in the HSC, with 10 out of the top 20 schools being selective high schools and the rest being private. In addition, I counted the top schools and the best public schools in terms of the HSC rankings was Willoughby Girls, which is ranked 56, and closely followed by Epping Boys, which is ranked 61. This is a significant trend because from an academic perspective across the board, selective schools will generally be superior than a New South Wales public school. So if you are a student who enjoys a competitive environment that prioritizes academics, then selective schools may be a better option. Although for students who want a more balanced lifestyle, broader options and ultimately less pressure, a high-performing public school might just be better or even more superior option than a selective school. What about a lower ranking school? Is that still worth it? Not really, in my opinion, because schools that are ranked around that 400 or 500 mark in the HSC rankings rarely have any students that get into university at all or have an ATAR of over 90 and above. So it is clear that academics is really not a focus at those really low ranked schools. I'm a firm believer that the people around you and the environment that you're in can shape who you become, especially as you're still a teenager and at a younger age. Attending selective school was beneficial for me, but everyone is different and you have to view things based on your own personal situation. And that's everything. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the very end. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you disagree or agree with any of my points, let us know down below. Or if you want me to talk about a different topic altogether, please let me know. I honestly have a bunch of different ideas, and sometimes I'm not sure what you guys really want to hear about. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.